Welcome back to our mini-series on meditation and self-development. Now, as we are drawing to the end of our mini-series, we start to come to the more advanced levels where our self-development is not just something about ourselves anymore, but is also starting to deal with our relationships with the people around us as well. One of the misapprehensions about self-development is that it's very spiritual and it's just something which is personal. But in fact, as we go higher and further in our self-development, we find that the way we treat others and the way we try to change the world around us for the better actually affects our own well-being and ability to make progress on our spiritual path as well. Earlier on in the course, we have already looked at some of the factors doing with our relationships which actually affect the quality or the richness of our mind which we bring with us to meditation. But today we're going to look at the full set of 4 different qualities which we call the 4 bases of sympathy, and how to apply these to the social groups in our lives to see how we can best use these in order to boost the quality of the mind which we bring with us to our meditation. Of course, just as there are ways to make a relationship, there are many ways which we can also break a good relationship which we have with the world around us. And this can be a great pity, because sometimes, although we have very good and positive things to share with the world, but if we are not accepted in the eyes of others, then even though we may have something good to say to them, but they will never want to listen to us, which is a pity, and it will be frustrating for us in the course of our spiritual cultivation. Sometimes we may have done 99 good things for another person, but if the 100th one is a flop, or if it undermines their trust, then sometimes they will forget all the other 99 times which we helped them. So there are several things which we ought to be very careful of in our self-development, in our dealings with others, to make sure that we don't spoil all our good work so far. These, if you want to compare them to an emotional bank account, which we talked about earlier on in our series, are rather like heavy withdrawals from our emotional bank account which we keep with other people. They are the dire opposite of the 4 bases of sympathy which we are going to be examining later on in the program. So what 4 are we talking about? In fact, first thing we're talking about is stinginess against other people. Supposing we know that someone is in need of something and we have more ourselves than we can use, but we are reluctant to share with them, or we don't share with them at all, then that can be a very major withdrawal from our relationship with that person. It will make them not trust us anymore. A second thing which may undermine our relationship with them is if we say things to them which are inconsiderate. Sometimes if a person is in need of encouragement and we don't give it to them, or we tell them that they deserve what they happen to them, then this can be very damaging for our relationship with that person. They may never see us in the same light anymore. A third thing is if they're in need of help and it's very obvious that we have the time, the manpower to help them, but we don't give the help which they deserve, then again that will put them in a very bad light from our point of view. And last but not least, if they need to trust you and you break a promise, or you undermine their trust in some way or another, then again this is a very serious reduction to our emotional bank account with that person. So these 4 behaviors are things which you should definitely start by trying to avoid. But the good news is that just as relationships can be destroyed easily in such a way, they can also be built and strengthened. And the way in which we build and strengthen these relationships is by doing exactly the opposite of these 4 ways to earn an enemy, by cultivating instead the 4 ways to earn a friend. And in brief, this is to be generous to people, giving them resources or lending them things, artful speech by giving people encouragement, as already described in an earlier lesson, also by being helpful to them, giving a helping hand when that's necessary, or putting our man in a situation where we are dispensing manpower, and also behaving in a way where we don't undermine their trust of us. If we can manage to do this, we will find that these are qualities which we can apply in the workplace, in the home, anywhere at all where we're dealing with other people in life, because wherever we go there are people who are short of resources, short of encouragement, short of help, and always someone who is short of someone they can trust or confide in. And if we can be the person to fill these gaps in people's lives, then instantly we can earn ourselves a friend. If we help people with other things, then they will want to help us when we are in need of a friend or in need of some help as well. So with every person we meet in our life, we should try to build up a healthy emotional bank account with them by cultivating these 4 bases of sympathy. In many of the societies in the Western world, we find that there's a very strong system of welfare in society, and some may argue that there's no need to be kind to other people because we already have the welfare system to do this for us. But in fact, if you study what the welfare system actually does for us, it doesn't provide all the 4 needs which we really want. Supposing you are ill, then yes, you do get health insurance, maybe you get medicine or care to your home for as long as you are still ill. But this only provides the help and the money which you need. It doesn't provide the trust or the encouragement, which are things which sometimes are more than money can buy. And it's in this respect that we need to rely heavily on those who are nearest and dearest to us to fill in the gaps in the things that we really need in life. This is very obvious in the Western world from the plight of many old people who are neglected or lonely in their final years of their life, even though they may have sons or daughters who can visit them quite easily, but they are abandoned by them, sometimes left with a cat or a dog as their best friend in the final years of their life, which is very sad indeed. Usually in Oriental culture this would not happen because the bonds between the family members is much stronger. But it's not only in old age that we experience such a lack of independence in our lives. Although sometimes we may be healthy and sometimes we may kid ourselves that we can be self-sufficient in everything that we do, but in fact there are many things and many times of our lives, rites of passage in our lives where we do become reliant on other people. For example, when we are children, when we are pregnant or ill, in our old age, sometimes in times of crisis, as very clearly illustrated by the recent tsunami tragedy, or in terms of the El Nino phenomena which happens nearly every year in the States. Or if we get into financial trouble, sometimes not through any fault of our own at all, or times where there's a marriage or where a student is going away from home for the first time in their life, or they're setting themselves up in life. And also these are the things which we have to turn to the people who are nearest and dearest to us to give us a helping hand in the case where we do need to receive help from others. Just as we give to others, then we will receive ourselves. So it's useful to make a separation between those who we would really devote ourselves to helping and those who may be more optional prospects for giving help to. Everyone likes to help everyone else in the world, but if you want to really be a perfectionist in helping others, then you have to make a clear division between who are your close family and who are your extended family. When we're talking about our close family, normally we mean particularly our own parents, who everyone has of course, husband and wife who may be optional, and our sons and daughters who may be optional too. We should make a special effort to make sure that we do everything to maintain a clear and unconditional healthy emotional bank account with these people. Why? Because there is no one else in the world who we are closest to than these. As for the rest of the world, well, we try to help them as much as possible, but there may be some conditions to the amount of trust or the amount of dedication which we give to maintaining a healthy emotional bank account with the other people in life. So how might we do this in practice? Supposing it's our parents. Maybe our parents are quite aged. Well, we need to be unconditional in maintaining the healthy state of balance of our emotional bank account with our parents. Sometimes this may not be particularly major things. Maybe something as simple as not being irritated when you're told the same stories again and again by your aging parents, or perhaps trying to help out your parents in ways which may be helping them to get about more easily in their old age, maybe by building new bathroom facilities on the same floor where they don't have to go upstairs every time they visit the bathroom. This may be something which is mattering quite a lot to them, although the expense may be minimal. And you should try to continue their life's work and not ask them about the things which irritates them in their old age, so that they have their dignity even to their dying moments of their life. These are the things which we mean that we would try to maintain an emotional bank account which is in a healthy balance with our parents for the whole of the time. Maybe we wouldn't do it for other people, maybe 2 or 3 times, and it would already be enough for us with other people. But for our parents, it has to be unconditional. For our spouse, many of the problems which come about in married life come from the fact that there's not trust on both sides of the marriage. You often find in a marriage that the husband or the wife are keeping a little bit back for themselves, in which case it's as if there's not total devotion involved in the marriage. If this is the case, then it's hard to imagine how their marriage will go on for very long, because there needs to be a certain sort of unconditionality between husband and wife to make the marriage work at all. And even for children, this can be the case. Stephen Covey describes a case of his own life where he tried to make up for his neglect of his children, where he had been working very hard by taking them out for many treats like baseball and cinema. And in the end, this didn't matter nearly as much as the fact that he put a blanket over his younger child when fell asleep in the back seat of the car in the cold weather. Well, the story went something like this. There's a businessman who had 2 sons, and he was feeling a little bit guilty because he spent all his time at work and he never had any time for his family. Out of guilt, he would spare one evening a month to take the children out to put everything back in its place by making it up to his children. Of course, he felt that there was some sort of debt in his emotional bank account even to his children. And his children sometimes felt resentment against him for not having spent more time with him. So what would he do? He would take them out to McDonald's and then to the baseball, this was America of course, and then to the movies. And that evening, the 2 little boys would get to do everything they wanted, to eat whatever they liked. And as they were quite young, by the end of the evening, the 2 little boys would be quite tired. The last thing of the night would be the movies, and at that time the youngest of the 2 sons would curl up in the cinema seat and eventually fell asleep. Even by the time the film came to an end, the little boy still had not woken up, so the father picked up the sleeping son and carried him back to the car. And the older brother, of course, followed behind. And as they got in the car, because it was cold outside, then the man allowed the little boy to curl up in the back seat of the car and continue to sleep. And he took off his own coat and he put it over his son to protect him from the cold. And the elder boy saw him do that. When they arrived home, they met with their mother, who asked them, of course, "Boys, did you have a nice evening?" And the boys looked a little bit distracted. They said, "Oh yes, we had baseball and this and that." But as if they were not really interested in what they had been treated to by their father. And eventually the elder boy turned around and he had a puzzled expression on his face and asked his father something. He said, "May I ask something?" He said, "I liked the baseball, I liked everything very much. But what I really want to ask you, Father, is that if I fell asleep in the cinema like my younger brother did, would you also put your coat over me to protect me from the cold?" So you can see that even for small boys, who we think maybe are not so perceptive about the things we do for them, they notice the things which really tell us about the love, the unconditional love which we have for them, much more than any expressions of extravagance in the money or the toys which we buy for them. So you can see that sometimes even small things can count if they show the unconditional nature of the love which you have for these particular close members of your family. And what about if the people we are talking about are your aunts and uncles or our friends, or maybe our acquaintances, our students, teachers, employees? Do we still have the same sort of unconditionality for them? Well, if we are able to, if we have the time and the resources, of course it's good to be unconditional to them too. But in practice, normally we have to have more conditions in the way which we help these other people. Sometimes we may help them on one-off occasions, for example, something special like a marriage or a funeral. But normally we have to have our conditions. In the olden days in Oriental culture, people would help their extended family only for as long as there was some sort of gratitude involved. If you helped a person 3 times and they were still ungrateful to you, then normally that would be the end of their help for them. Supposing, for example, that your next door neighbor asked you to take their daughter for a piano lesson once, it would be better to tell them at that time that maybe you wouldn't be able to help them in the same way every week. Otherwise, there may be an understanding built up that you're going to help them in the same way every week, and that would become a burden for you, sometimes at the expense of the care which you're going to take of your own family, a husband or wife, or your own parents. So these are some of the considerations which we have to think about, which are keeping alive the warmth between people, keeping alive the channels of communication between people which allow the virtue to flow from one person to another, to allow us to develop ourselves towards virtue as a team instead of simply going it alone. So we can see that far from being an obstacle to our self-development, in fact the family can actually be one of the tools which we are using to upgrade ourselves in terms of personal development. So if you find that your meditation seems to be becoming rather unyielding, or if you find that you're not being able to go as far in your meditation as you might have liked, then maybe it's a good time to go back and look at some of the aspects of the emotional bank account in your own life. Try to see if you've understood the aspect of conditionality and unconditionality in application of the emotional bank account to the groups which you have in your life. During the coming week, why not try looking to see how you're dealing with other people in your life. See how you can apply it in your life. And if you have any queries as a result of if you find you still have any doubts about the progress you have in your meditation, or if you think that your understanding of your emotional bank account with those around you is interfering with your progress in meditation, then why not try writing into the Meditation for All program. We'll be more than happy to answer any queries which you may have. Next week is going to be the last session of this mini-series, and we're going to be looking at the 6 most important social groups affecting our spiritual progress. In the meantime, keep up your daily meditation and have a go at applying the 4 bases of sympathy, the emotional bank account, in your everyday life, and I'll be seeing you again at the same time next week.